What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I'm actually excited to bring you my full review of the Chris Reeve Inkosi. The Inkosi has a 3.6 inch S45 VN blade steel, 4.8 inch titanium handles, and an overall length of 8.4 inches, and Mr. Reeve claims that his knife weighs 4.96 ounces. Let's check out how much this premium steel actually weighs. Where's that sweet spot? 4.6 is the claimed. 4.9 ounces. So let's talk a little bit about what got me here to buying a Chris Reeve knife. One, the actual just simple curiosity of the fact. This knife is well known if you're into collecting knives, and if you know anything about the knife community, you know what Chris Reeve is all about, and you've at least heard of the knife if you haven't seen some type of review or someone talking about it, or it being a part of their everyday carry pictures out on Instagram, if that's where you found this channel from. This knife is very well known and has quite the reputation. I had originally picked up a Hinderer XM18 3.5 inch recurved, and the reason that I decided to pick up that knife is because I had the ZT-0562, which was actually my very first premium titanium purchased American knife, and I liked the design so much that it interested me in picking up a Hinderer. Now, having said that, after I got that XM18 in hand, I was kind of let down. It had fantastic action, it was very well built, but it was just a little bit chunkier than the ZT-0562. I feel like the ZT-0562 is actually the natural evolution of the Hinderer design because it's curved down and it has slightly better feeling ergos. It still has a really bad flipper switch, but I just feel like I actually preferred the ZT-0562 to the Hinderer, which was not what I would have thought when I was thinking about picking up the Hinderer. So I decided to go ahead and let it go after a very short while. Did not have that very long at all. And it got me to thinking, I've heard how everybody talks about the ergos on a Chris Reeve knife being amazing because it's built to be used. And I don't want to spoil my review of that, but that is kind of what led me into getting this. What I'm going to do is just my usual. I'm going to go ahead and do my rundowns with some comparable knives. Let me move my tripod back into position. Somehow bumped it out when I was working on the last video. And we'll go ahead and move this over into centering position. You know, as I'm thinking about it, did I mention the full length on this? I'm not sure that I did. The full length on this knife is 8.4 inches, just in case I didn't mention it earlier. If I didn't, I'm so sorry, but there it is. First up is my Spyderco Yojimbo 2. As you can see, the Yojimbo 2, one of my favorite EDCs. It is just a smaller knife overall. Do I have this up too high? Did I knock this all out of whack? Yeah, I think I had it up just a little too high. Sorry about that. 2 adjustments in one video. What is happening? Next up is going to be my Spyderco Shaman. This one here is definitely one of my favorites since I've swapped out the scales. It had good ergos before, don't get me wrong, but I really like these dark matter carbon fiber scales that I picked up from Carbodize. The skinny has really just transformed this into one that I actually enjoy EDCing, and it actually did shave off a little bit of weight. As you can see, it is much closer in size to the actual Shaman. This is definitely, I can understand why people say the full size ones, probably even the small ones, because it does feel very well made, but I can see why they say that these are built and designed to be worked. You know, they're built and designed to be used to work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Not so eloquently, apparently. Next up is going to be my Benchmade bug out with the titanium flatanium scales. So if you have a bug out, there's a really good reference for you. And I'm going to bring out my SIG K320 made by Hogue. This is another full-size knife. So as you can see, this is actually bigger than both of these knives. The SIG, while it is still a full-size knife, it actually does have a shorter handle, but very similar blade length. I know from the pivot it doesn't look like it, but it is very similar blade length, and it's very similar cutting path, with the Inkosi just being slightly longer. But again, this definitely is a full-size knife, but it does have a slender build, so it does feel like it is smaller than what it is when you're carrying it. And the weight, like I said, is right in a good spot as far as I'm concerned. Next up out of my budget knives is going to be my Kubi Royal. Kubi Royal has a sub 3-inch blade, but I use that for the smaller knife references. And then for my full-size budget knives, I'm actually going to use my Civivi Elementum button lock because I feel like the profile is very similar. As you can see, it is bigger than both of these knives. The larger of the two being the Elementum button lock, and the profiles are very similar as far as how they kind of feel in hand and how they work. But the Inkosi has done a really good job balancing the slender profile with really good ergos. So with those comparisons out of the way, let's run through the profiles real quick. I'll bring out a couple of comparable knives as far as, you know, size and build, and then I'm going to talk about this knife and my thoughts and impressions. So you can see here it is thinner than the Royal, and then we'll bring the button lock out here. So button lock, if I can put it into frame, is the same profile. Don't let the chamfering here on the edge fool you. They're actually the same thickness. And then I won't bring the K320, but I will bring the bug out so you can see just how much thinner the bug out still is compared to the Inkosi. But that Inkosi is pretty close, which is impressive for a full-size knife. And then I will bring out both the Spydercos because I want you to see the difference between the Shaman and the Inkosi, and it's wanting to focus on my knuckles. So I am going to reverse grip, and actually you're going to need to imagine that they're lined up here to see that they're actually the same thickness, which is impressive for the size of that knife. The last comparison, we'll do the same thing, is going to be the Shaman. And you can see the Shaman is just a touch thicker. Just a touch thicker. Not too bad though. Really, really close. All right, I'm going to bring out and just show some comparison knives, some comparable knives, so that you guys can get a sense of some of the other knives that I carry that are very close to it. First up is going to be the MKM Gosia, which I think is a really good comparison when you take into account that these have premium builds that actually are built to work hard. When you look at the, ooh, that was really close to being put on the blade. I need to look through the lens on this particular one. As you can see here, the Gosia, while it is smaller, it does strike that really good balance for ergos. It has the slightly taller handles, really nice blade steel for working hard, just a really quality built knife. So I really do like this comparison, even though the Gosia is a little bit smaller. I love, love, love the inset liner lock on the Gosia. As I've broken it in, really, really like the way that it operates and the access to it, and that it does not really matter where you're putting your fingers on the knife when you go to use it. Another one that I picked up here recently that I think compares really well is actually the Concept Prêt-à-Tout. This one here is really close in size. As you can see here, the Inkosi is still longer, or is it? I think the curve is throwing me off. Let me see. Let me do this way. Maybe. Hold on. I want to have a good grip. I'm not trying to get any cuts on this video. Is it? Let's see here. Gosh, it's really hard to tell. It looks like they might be. There we go. And actually the Prêt-à-Tout is slightly longer when you get out to that tip. You see how that tip just a little bit longer of a knife overall. So this one actually would be a really good comparison. It does have the 9CR Damascus, but if you get the one with the S35EN, this has the S45. A little bit of an upgrade here recently from Chris Reeve on that. The Prêt-à-Tout is a little bit lighter. They both have frame lock access. The Phosphor Bond washers has that hydraulic smooth action on the Chris Reeve, whereas you have the bearings on the Prêt-à-Tout. Now what's interesting on the Prêt-à-Tout is it's milled out the titanium, and those those ceramic bearings are riding directly on the titanium. So it is milled out. I think they do that to harden the titanium where the bearings are going to ride. So I will be providing long-term updates on how that performs. It was really dropped shut, but I think I had it too loose and it was moving over on me. In order to center it back up, I had to redo the Loctite a few days ago, and this is actually my first day pulling this back out. So I'm assuming it'll smooth up as I've used that a little bit longer. And the last one that I wanted to bring out is actually my ZT0562 Hinderer designed American-made ZT0562. This knife is what led me to get to the Hinderer, which led me to sell the Hinderer because I was disappointed in it, and then ended up with the Inkosi. So as you can see here, these guys are about the same size. And that is one of the things that I liked about the 0562 is it had to, in my opinion, because it has the chamfered down edges, it didn't feel as blocky, and it does have some contouring to the handles, so it felt like it worked really well. The Inkosi has S45VN, the ZT0562 has 20 CV. They did mill out the inside of the 0562 to help with the weight, but I believe, if I recall correctly, these probably are really close in weight too. It's been a little while since I've done the weight on the 0562. Let me just check that real quick. So 5.4 versus 4.9, that's probably why it felt pretty close. That's really hard to tell in hand for me. That's a really hard thing to tell. Both of these are frame locks. They both have the steel lock bar inserts. The ZT0562 does have the over travel stop built in on the outside, whereas the Inkosi does not. Now, they do have that pocket clip there, and I think that's probably meant to be like a stop pin because it is positioned right in between the bar. Let me close it because it'll be a little bit easier to get it close to the camera. But it is, you see, it does sit on both, but that does help you when you put your fingers on it to be able to operate that hydraulically smooth phosphor bronze washer action that you get on the Chris Reeves. Now, I've only had mine for less than a month, and I only carry it on occasion. I grab, you know, different knives on different days depending on my moods, and as I have this a little bit longer, I'll probably be more inclined to gravitate to grab towards it. I mean, it is a big purchase for me. I am not a monetized channel in any way, shape, or form, so I had to let knives go in order to pick this up, you know. And well, I picked up the XM18 by letting those knives go, and then I used all the funds for the XM18 to pay for this. In the end, I think this is a great knife. Honestly, I think that if you did spend the money on this, you shouldn't be scared to use it. This feels like it's built to be used. It has really large phosphor bronze washers that make contact with the blade all the way through around the pivot, and I think that's one of the reasons that you get that hydraulically smooth action. When I got it, I did clean off the factory grease and tried it with a little bit of the oil that I use for all my other knives, and I didn't like the way the action felt, so I actually went and took it back apart and I used the factory grease again, and I ordered a little bit more for the future maintenance of this knife. The other thing that's really nice about them is they have a very affordable spa day program where you can send it in and they'll touch up anything on the knife for you that is included in that service, and I'm not quite sure what other services they do offer, but again, this knife, I really do like it. It's very different, which is one of the reasons why you see me pick up something like, say, a button lock, or you see me pick up something that has something like the shark lock, because of the fact that it's so different. It's nice, in my opinion, to have some variety in your inventory if you're truly a collector. It's nice to have something that isn't always a liner lock, something that isn't always a frame lock, something that isn't always guillotine fall shut. That's one of the things that I like about it. It gives you an opportunity to experience something very different and very unique. Now, because of the fact that this is an expensive knife, I will say this is probably something that you would have to consider heavily if you wanted to purchase. I think the Sebenza is a little bit more popular because it's a little bit less. It has more neutral ergonomics. If you look at it, it doesn't have as many cutouts here telling you where to put your hand position on the knife. And I think that's probably one of the big appealing things, is because you can move your hand around where you want to. Now you can move your hand up on the Inkosi and you can choke back. It does get you right up on that cutting edge. It gives you one heck of a sharpening choil. It's so far off of that plunge that you'd be able to sharpen this quite a bit before you run into any issues with that. Would I recommend this knife? Absolutely. I would say if you're a collector and you want to get a knife that is more premium, that is more high-end, that is American made and has really cool action and feels like it's really built to be used hard, I feel like this could compete almost with a fixed blade, with the way that they have it making contact with the washers all the way throughout the pivot, the way it has this really nice lockup on there, and the frame lock adding extra security to prevent this from breaking down. I feel like this is probably going to be a very strong knife. This one is not going anywhere. This will stay in my collection. As I have it, I'll probably end up using it more and more. I definitely think I'll like carrying it. It actually has me considering potentially looking at an Umanzan or a Sebenza in the small size going forward, because I think it would be a little bit more friendly to EDC. If you look at something like what I'm carrying today, which is actually one of the smaller ones that I like to EDC, you can tell the Urban EDC Supply F5.5 is just a smaller knife all the way around. But when you look at the thickness on these two, that's where again I go to say that this is a longer knife, but it is really thin and the profile is really narrow, so that makes it really a joy to carry. In the end, really happy that I picked one up. Really something that I think as a collector, that if you're really into this hobby and you really love these tools, that you think about, I wouldn't say sell your inventory, I would say save towards getting one. I sell things if I don't use them. I'm just built that way. I may like something and I may say something is recommendable, but if I find that I gravitate towards something else that I like a little bit more, that I'm using more than something, I'm not the type of person just to hang on to something that's not going to use it. I prefer to keep stuff in my inventory that I'm going to use. That's not to say at some point in time that I might not get something that I'm just going to be like, this is a save queen. It's something that I'm going to pull out at home and just really enjoy the way that it looks. Maybe once in a while I might open a package with it, but this is not what this is going to be. I haven't picked it up as much, but again, that's because the initial sticker shock for someone like me, this is a lot for me to have put out. But I can see where I'll probably get to a point where I enjoy not just carrying it, but you know, I'll probably grab a box and break it down one day with it. Haven't done that yet, but I imagine this thing is probably very slicey. So I know it's a little bit weird to give you a review of a knife that I'm not really using a lot like my others, and you know, it is the circumstance, but I also do long-term reviews, and like my ZTO 562 when I first got it, I immediately, for whatever reason with that knife, just felt like it was built to work, started breaking down boxes, using it right away. With this one here, I just feel like it's a little bit special, I guess, because of the reputation with it. I'll get over that initially, and when you get the long-term review on this guy here, you'll be able to get how it's holding up. You know, I do fidget with it a lot because it is actually quite satisfying to slow roll this one, because you get resistance throughout the roll, but it's really silky smooth resistance. Like it's just like someone's just pushing back just enough to keep you engaged with it while you're deploying it. But I did tune it up to where you can actually deploy it if you really wanted to give it a flick, it'll go. You just got to make sure that you're putting your thumb way down underneath so you don't have that sharpness hitting the whole thumb. That is definitely one of my complaints, but I think everybody's well aware of the fact that the thumb studs are not the best. This is definitely really thin behind the edge. A hollow grind is always going to be a really slicey knife, and this is no exception. I should have brought some paper out here so I could have just shown you how it just slices through the paper. Maybe I have one still around here. All right, so I did go ahead and just grab this paper. This is made out of recycled paper, so it's really like receipt thin. So you can just see this just slices through it, no problem. So, oh, that was a really bad, I tore it at the end. So you can see really slicey, fantastic edge from the factory. Highly recommendable. I mean, I don't know if you like the Umanzan, the Inkosi, or the Sabenza better one over the other, but I definitely think this is a Grail knife that is worth chasing at some point in time. And even if you picked one up used and you wanted to send it in to Chris Reeve for their spa day treatment, these knives, I think anybody could use the crap out of them, and it's still going to feel just as good as it did out of the box. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video and hopefully it helped you. Thank you for the support. If you did enjoy the video, do me a favor, leaving a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Consider subscribing, especially if you're interested to see how this does long term and how I warm up to using it more. And thanks for all the support. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, guys. Until next time, peace.